you could find yourself in legal jeopardy, and the potential liability would be dollars that you may have to pay. Is it just, the 10 or so counties that surround Atlanta, defined as the metropolitan region, where it says I can't compete? Or again, is it all 50 United States? If the prospective employer really wants you, they should be, willing to work with you on a compromise.
That's amazing, Rob. I appreciate that. That's Rob Turner, a corporate attorney who's going to give us some advice on how executives work with attorneys, both as corporate counsel and personal counsel in business matters. Welcome into the channel. My name is Tom. I'm the founder of Vertical Motion, where we help good people become great leaders. Specifically, we're helping mid-career professionals. If you're a senior manager, a director, or even an early vice president, you're trying to move up in your career, this is the place for you. This is a channel you're going to learn a lot, and we have a lot of coaching and other products that we can offer. All of this information is down in the link in the description. But today I'm excited to bring to you a new member of the community to the podcast, Mr. Rob Turner. Now, Rob is a full-service commercial attorney and business advisor with more than 20 years experience as a leader in legal and business services. He's practicing commercial real estate, corporate law, M&A, business technology, commercial agreements. He's described himself as a businessman trapped in an attorney's body and founded the firm In Town Legal in 2016 to deliver legal services in a way that cuts through big law bureaucracy. Rob's originally from the Southeast, and he attended undergraduate at Auburn and studied law at the school in Seattle. And after practicing law in Atlanta for 20 years, Rob and his family decided to relocate to Seattle in 2019 to spend more time in the mountains. And I can attest to that. We left Atlanta after 20 years to come to Denver. So kind of a similar vein there, Rob. Please welcome Rob Turner to the channel. Rob, welcome.
Hi, Tom. It's great to speak with you and your colleagues, and I appreciate the opportunity to chat and look forward to talking some more about the practice of law and helping you guys understand how to work with attorneys.
Yeah, I wanted you on because I find that this is one of the things that people who are moving up to the executive level don't necessarily think that they need to incorporate, or don't even think about incorporating into their skill set. Some people, unfortunately, have a lot of experience with lawyers early in their career. Some people luckily don't, but they will need to know how to work with attorneys in different ways. And so that's why I wanted to have you on. So I'm excited for this. So my first question for you, and it's the first question I ask everybody who comes on to this podcast, is I'd like to know your definition of great leadership, maybe with an example from someone in your background.
So my first thought outside of family members is going to a gentleman who was actually my first boss out of law school. He's actually my default, and I have used him as a benchmark and an aspirational measuring tool for myself for what I want to be like when I'm providing legal services. Why I think this particular gentleman was such a good one as an attorney, he no longer practices law, is that he helped younger attorneys understand what they were doing. He took the time to stand over your shoulder in a coaching way and help you understand the why behind what you were being asked to do, not just a rote, well, this is how it has to be, but the why behind it. And then just the way this particular person interacted with his fellow colleagues, law partners, and his clients. It's always very professional, social, and it was a way to me that kind of also met, beyond just being a good leader, the definition of professional, someone I would want to have out front representing my interests. They did it with high integrity, a way that you knew that your interests were going to be represented. That's what I'm looking for as far as being a good leader. Also, perseverance too. Those are all important qualities for leadership for myself.
Yeah, integrity, perseverance, and a sense of understanding the why behind the what. Those are very powerful elements of leadership, and I appreciate you sharing that. Yeah, and I love that, of course, as someone in law, integrity is obviously going to be something that resonates greatly with you, because I can imagine you've experienced people with and without integrity in your career.
Absolutely. And I've had fingers pointed, and it's always good to know, even if someone's pointing a finger at you, that you can look yourself in the mirror at the end of the day and know that you held a high ethical standard and in zealously advocating for your client's interest. So that's super important.
Amazing. Yeah, I agree with that. Tell the audience a little bit about your background. Give us just kind of the short version of how you got to be general counsel in town legal in Seattle all these years after all the things you've done.
It definitely took the road less traveled, like the Robert Frost poem. And I'm not even a big poetry fan per se. I respect it, but that one really resonates with me. The journey, it has included my wife every step of the way, which is also pretty cool. We dated in college. We went to different colleges, and we decided that after we graduated, we wanted to be together. We had decided to look for towns across the country that had both law schools and hot technology sectors. She was an engineer by education. So Seattle was one of those. It was white hot in the mid 90s, and we decided to come out here, and that's where I attended law school. Many law schools, at least those that are not the biggest names, the ones up in the Northeast that everyone will recognize. Aside from those, most law schools, folks will stay in the general geographic location after they graduate. After I graduated from here, while I passed the bar and practiced for a time back with the gentleman that I mentioned a few minutes ago, we decided that we wanted to be back in the Southeast. And then we eventually settled in Atlanta. I developed a practice there and really enjoyed it. But the moving so quickly after graduating from law school meant that I had to take the bar again in Georgia. So I had to go through that whole process to become licensed in that state. And then while I had just social connections from undergraduate in and around the Southeast, I did not have like professional law school connections. So I had to be a grinder. I had to get out and, the networking that we've talked about, which is so important with your community, I had to actively do that to build relationships in the community, to then get to know law firms that practiced or had practices in the areas that interested me, and to build experience, so good experience, so that I could pop up on their radar when they were hiring. So I worked at several local firms in town and worked my way up to a couple of regional Southeastern firms before I had an in-house stint. This is a good lesson for all of your colleagues: is know what you're leaving or running from, but just as much as what you're running to. So on paper, the in-house job description was really what I went to law school for. It was because I didn't want to be a litigator. Litigation, just for me personally, just didn't interest me. I wanted to be a business attorney. I wanted to work in-house, like inside a company's legal department. I wanted to work on commercial matters, contracts, and things like that, and something that ideally had a pretty heavy real estate component to it as well. IT service provider with a big data center footprint, that just blended everything that I wanted. However, back to the lesson and knowing what you're running from as much as what you're running to, I should have done more homework on that business. For me, it was not a satisfactory job at all, just period. So after being there, it was enough that I knew that I needed to extricate myself from the situation. So when I left, I did not want to go back to a larger size law firm. By that point, I had been practicing, in my early teens as far as number of years in law practice. And there were things about the larger firms that frustrated me. Part of those just being the institutional layers of bureaucracy. And what that led, and where I had experienced direct frustrations for me, was being unable to provide ultimately a response or a recommendation to a client because it had to go through 3 levels of tiers. And the highest level only met once a month, and you missed their calendar by a 2 days, so you weren't even going to get a response for another 6 weeks until you can get on the calendar for the next meeting. I had that several times, and it frustrated the heck out of me. After leaving the in-house position, I went to a boutique firm in Atlanta that had a strong business and technology focus, working with a lot of early stage Atlanta area clients. To me, that was the closest thing that I could find at the time in Atlanta that was similar back to that first job in Seattle that I had with the mentor, that the person that I've been using as the guidepost all these years. I really liked working with my colleague and law partner at that position. We worked together several years. But the that you hear was we had a little difference of how we were branding our services and how we wanted to go to the market. So the best way I describe it is that ultimately I came into a house that was already built and furnished, and I was renting a room and could decorate it however I wanted to. And we shared the common areas, and we always got along well and matters like that. But I would not be able to repaint the house and redecorate the walls, in that analogy, the way I wanted to. So there was a little bit of a difference that, we were already, small firm anyway. It was easy enough to leave and start something new that I decided to start In-Town Legal. So I'm coming up on a 10-year anniversary with that, which is pretty neat.
Congrats.
Thank you. So what I've done with In-Town is, since I've had it, is really to use the experiences that I've built over the years, including the in-house, and then being with my law partner at 360, and then where we are now, to say that not only can I help you, the individual, the business owner, or the entity itself, but I'm also a business owner. I can appreciate the challenges of income flow, getting clients, sales, and things like that. And I feel like it makes me, at least in my eyes, a better advisor for my clients than if I had just stayed the traditional law firm route of staying with big law and just grinding it out and doing that kind of thing. To tie it all in, the road less traveled, it's not always a comfortable road, but you can drive the ship the way you want to. You can hopefully help clients the way you feel like they deserve to be, and also live the life that you, the individual, want to live, which means going to your children's events and not having people looking at their watch and tapping this and shaking their fingers at you, all of which I've had, despite you showing up at work at 6:30 a.m. because you knew you wanted to leave at 5:30 to go to that track meet. All that kind of stuff is what has brought me to where I am today.
It's interesting because your story, you say it's the road less traveled, but it's very similar to the path that I traveled, right? I started in very large organizations. I started in the Army, and then I was in defense industry like Northrop Grumman, General Dynamics.
Okay.
And then I just went to smaller and smaller organizations till I started building my own companies. And now with Vertical Motion, it's basically my wife and me and a couple folks putting this together. I have found myself moving towards, I also crave that autonomy, that ability to kind of make my own decisions. I have my own vision of what I want to accomplish. When I had business partners in previous venture-backed businesses, it wasn't my decision entirely about how we moved forward. And especially with venture, it wasn't even the leadership's decision a lot of times, how we moved forward. And so I kind of moved in the same direction as you. And I think a lot of people watching this are also, I think, resonating with a lot of what you talked about. I wanted the big flashy job and I had it for 6 years and now I hate it. And now I want to move something to smaller. And even that's great, but it's not great as I thought it would be. And there's probably more. And so fully a third of the people who come into our community wind up becoming entrepreneurs, which is kind of an interesting trend. But I think as people learn how to become a better leader, they get more comfortable being the person who's responsible for the strategy, the vision, the direction of the organization. That sounds like that was your path.
Yeah, it's I encourage it. Even whenever I have the opportunity to speak with folks that have an entrepreneurial bent, or you can kind of hear it or see it in their eyes, I definitely encourage them to chase their dreams.
I'd love to just go through some real talk about, like, imagine I have never worked with an attorney. I'm about to become a vice president in a mid-sized organization, and I have just been given a huge stack of contract papers that are different than any like at-will agreement I've ever seen before. There's a whole bunch of riders and non-disparagement, non-recruit, non-solicit, and all these things. Give us just some real talk on like how lawyers work with both organizations and with individuals.
It's a great example. I like it because as you would move or will move into executive leadership, your colleagues, the network will likely experience something like that. So this is where I strongly encourage everyone to have like an attorney that they can go to when they're presented with these documents to help them review it and understand what the individual, the soon to be vice president, is being asked to agree to or limit themselves from future actions. In the vice president example, what these folks will likely need is an employment law attorney, someone who specializes in employment agreements and helping you understand what are enforceable in your particular state, such as non-competes and things of that nature. You as the individual should be thinking about, if you don't already have it within the network here in Vertical Motion, are trusted advisors in your local town. Maybe it's your tax advisor, or maybe it's some other persons that may be a little more senior to you that in neighborhood community groups or at your church or whatever that may be, or school or something like that, where you can ask them for a referral. Certainly, state and local bar associations will also maintain referral networks if you've got a question or unable to otherwise find someone. But I share all that to say, how do I identify an attorney? For me, referral, like I'll use you, Tom, as the example. If I don't know someone, but you're a trusted advisor to me, I'm going to reach out to you and ask you if you can put me in touch with someone. And I'm probably going to say, because they're already a trusted person with Tom, I don't know if I need to go to the next level of further digging. But that's kind of step one, to find the person. But to bring this back to the example with the employment law and the soon-to-be vice president, non-compete, non-disclosure, non-solicitation, those are higher level expectations that the company, your employer, may impose on you as you become more senior to your business. And I'll just tick off what they mean. Like a non-disclosure, sometimes called a confidentiality agreement, means that you, the employee, use me, Rob Turner, are agreeing that while I'm employed with ABC Company, all of their confidential information could be financial information, it can be suppliers, it can be customer list, it can be prospective customer list, it could be IP. Whatever that confidential information is, I'm going to agree that I cannot use it or disclose it at any point in the future, even if I leave my employment with you. So my real talk on that one is those are pretty common. And really the only thing to think about would be if, for example, your progress into executive leadership means you are leaving your existing employer and coming over here as a vice president, then what may you already know from your prior employment or from prior employments or opportunities in the past that belong to you, that we need to say, hey, new company, I'm okay with most of these items being your confidential information, but I happen to know this from 2 stops ago, and I need the ability to use that in the future. That would be maybe one example where your employment law attorney can help you fine tune that. But generally, those are pretty common with any level of employment, all the way down to entry level up to, of course, the senior most. The next two nons are non-solicitation and non-competes. And non-solicitation essentially says that if I'm leaving my vice president role to now be hired as a senior VP with another company over here, that anyone that I knew when I was the vice president, like that were, for example, suppliers of the company or employees or other parties like that, customers too, at my new level as senior VP over here with the new company, I cannot go back and solicit them to come over and do business with my new employer. Non-solicitations are typically limited. They generally have anything from a 6-month to 1 to 3 year limitation. So they are compartmentalized in that respect, but they could be important if the new company over here has dangled a really big raise in front of you to go and become their SVP and they are fully expecting you to go after or bring over a whole department of your former employees, well, you could find yourself in legal jeopardy, and the potential liability would be dollars that you may have to pay if you violate that non-solicitation. So that, again, would be something you want to understand what this means for you. And this is where your employment law attorney could help you, go through those details and really figure it out. The last one is the non-compete. What that one is saying is, I am agreeing that if I leave my employment, that I'm agreeing not to compete with my former employer for a period of time. There are certainly nuances in a non-compete, and the points that you want to think about would be, well, what does competition mean? Is it just really broadly defined? Is it anything under the sun? Well, that's not going to be helpful. Or is it really narrowly defined where, I could probably get comfortable with this? The other points to be thinking about a non-competition are, where is it limited to? So we both talked about having lived in Georgia and the Atlanta area in the past. Is it, using Atlanta, for example, is it just the 10 or so counties that surround Atlanta, defined as the metropolitan region, where it says I can't compete? Or again, is it all 50 United States, something really broad like that? Those are points that you need to know and where an attorney can help you. And then the other point would be the term. What is the term? Is it, again, a year, 2 years? How long do I have to sit on the sideline? Or am I okay? Or do you help me understand that it's okay if I leave? Those are really important and real world examples that I'm confident, if your colleagues have not already been presented with them, some of them will have these types of agreements put in front of them in the future. Another important takeaway is, I would not sign them as presented. I would absolutely pay and invest the dollars to have someone help me understand whether they ultimately are okay to sign, or do we need to offer some fine tuning, some recommended edits. If the prospective employer really wants you, they should be, willing to work with you on a compromise. I'm always wary when a company takes a position, it's our way or the highway. If they do that, to me, that almost raises another red flag. Well, why are they taking this position? Or maybe through the grapevine how aggressive they are with former employees, and maybe they sue all their former employees, and it just gets messy every time someone leaves out the door. All important points where having a go-to attorney to help you understand this and what you're signing up for can really be helpful, limit headaches for you in the future, and can certainly help you save dollars or earn dollars, thinking about it regarding a non-compete.
Phenomenal. This is such great advice. I wish I knew this 20 years ago in my career, when I had signed some things that later on I came to regret. And so there's incredibly valuable insight there. Well, one of the things that you mentioned, Rob, is finding and having an attorney who can help you with these kinds of things, especially on the employment law. One of the questions that I have for you is, how do you find a good attorney? But let's say I find a good attorney who helps me with employment law, but now I need an attorney for something else, like I'm trying to buy real property, or I want to set up a trust, or I'm being sued. Maybe it's not exactly what this good attorney that's helped me with this one case. If I know one good attorney who doesn't practice what I need help, what's another way to find other attorneys in the areas that I do need help with?
Presuming you had a good working relationship with that prior counsel, I recommend going back to them and asking them for a referral. Hey, Miss Jones, I had a great time working with you on my employment law contract last year. I know this is a little out of the blue, but my wife and I haven't updated our wills in a long time. The last time we did it was before we had children. And I want to think about protecting my children. My wife and I want powers of attorney and things like that. Can you help steer us to a trust and estates attorney that can help us put together some will documents? Questions like that. Or similarly, gosh, I hate it that it's come to this, but my spouse and I we've decided that we want to part ways. We don't want to be married to each other anymore. And I need someone to help me, whether it's amicable-ish or just nasty. I would still go back to that person as a starting point and ask them for a referral for, in this case, a family law attorney that specializes in divorce matters, marital dissolution. Those, to me, from my personal experience, have been the most efficient way to find someone. Again, you can always now, hop online and do searches. And, my baseline is to always presume that the folks are competent, whoever comes up on the search. Google reviews are there, and those can be really helpful. Then the bar associations, whether it's the state or the local city where you live, especially if the city's big enough, they will likely have their own referral networks that you can reach out to. And in this case, state bar associations are particularly helpful. They will have consumer-facing hotlines, numbers that you can call. And if you don't speak directly with them, they're pretty prompt about calling you back. And you can use them to help you find some resources that will ultimately help you to back into finding an attorney. The other point I'll share is that unless it's like something that we know is like slowly percolating, like a family law divorce, we finally decided we want to get this going, let's hold our noses and do it. But sometimes the clock is ticking. And that would be if you're sued or your company is sued. And complaints almost always have a 30-day response time from when they are formally served. You shouldn't mess around. Like if, for example, your business is on the receiving end of a complaint, and for everyone's just reference, a complaint is what is filed with the court. That's the starting point for a civil lawsuit. I'm suing you for a breach of contract. So I have to prepare a complaint that says my company had this contract with you. You failed to perform. You owe us $1 gazillion, and we've sent you 10 demands and you failed to pay. We're now seeking, to have the court compel you to pay us or do whatever it is. That's the complaint that's filed. But once the complaint gets served on you or your business, that clock is running. So you shouldn't waste any time. And again, I would go back if I had the trusted advisor. And again, maybe it's not the attorney, maybe it's your local accountants or someone like that. They will surely be able to help steer you to other attorneys. That's how you find someone. And then you should have an interview with them. It's an introductory call to chat with them or video chat like what we're doing, and describe your matter. I've been referred to you. I've got a civil complaint that's been filed against my business, and I want to chat with you about potential assistance in this litigation. And it turns out that the person you're talking to is green, like they are fresh out of law school and they decided to set up their own legal practice. And this is a high stakes litigation for your business. You learn all this while you're talking to them. You probably shouldn't go with them. I wouldn't go with them. Let's say that. You probably need to keep looking, but having an interview or telephone call with the persons to see what their demeanor is, kind of back to what I was looking for in the leadership at the beginning of this conversation. What is their bedside manner? What's their competency? And even consider asking them for their own references. What are some other customers or recent clients that they can share with you that I, as a potential customer of this law firm, can talk to see if they can help me?
That's great. This is good stuff. I have one more question for you, and then we'll kind of wrap things up. And this question really it's kind of based a little bit on what we were talking about in the community last night. So a lot of the folks that follow this channel that are tuning in, some of them are running their own organizations, their own companies, right? And in those cases, the attorney that's representing the business generally represents their interests. But that's not always the case for executives who are joining larger corporations. Can you talk about the difference in what a corporate attorney is responsible for and what, like, say, your personal attorney who's not a part of the organization that you work for, what they represent? Because I think a lot of people think, well, if I ever need an attorney, well, we've got a corporate attorney. So I'll just go down to Bob's office and Bob will give me great legal advice, right? Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, that's a great question, Tom, and a great example that comes up a lot, which is just literally, I've got a question. I'm going to go down, walk down the hall to my company's attorney, who's what we call in-house counsel. That means he or she is the employed by your same employer as well, and they are acting as the attorney for the business. But that person, that attorney's obligations are to the business. It's not to you, the individual. So the example that we were talking about a little bit earlier with the nons, let's use the non-compete. That attorney may very well have drafted the non-compete that you are being asked to sign to protect the business. Because what she wants as the general counsel, an in-house counsel for the business, is to not have executives leaving and being poached by other companies and competing with us. So if you go to her and say, hey, what does this really mean? What does it mean for me? While they have a duty of candor, they can't lie to you. What they would be saying is, or should say, is you need to go hire your own personal counsel to help you understand what the risks are or what it could mean for you with a non-compete. So the personal counsel, the personal attorney, always has your interest at heart versus in this example that we're talking about, the business attorney, she would always be, her first duty, fiduciary duty, is to the company and its shareholders. Now, while she may periodically or regularly interact with the C-suite and the executives, ultimately it's the shareholders of the company, whether it's a big one like Coca-Cola, or if it's a closely held company that only has 10 shareholders and really only 2 are the majority owners. That's what we're talking about. But there's an important difference, which brings us back to why it's so important for you as the executive to have someone that you can go to, or at least knowing that if I have the need that's coming up or feel like it might be coming up, I can pick up my phone and with just a few calls, get to someone who can refer me to someone that can help represent my interests.
Yeah, very valuable and important information. Like if you are asking your corporate attorney about, hey, my employment agreement is bothering me, I want to change it. The corporate attorney is there to represent the needs of the corporation, not you.
Exactly
And
right.
so if you let that attorney edit your document, they're going to edit it in favor of they would be legally bound to edit it in favor of the organization, not the individual. And that's, I think some people forget where attorneys lie. As an attorney, your responsibility is to the person who has retained you as legal counsel, right?
Yep. And that's an important part of the attorney-client relationship, because that's where you guys may have heard of the privilege, the confidential privilege of communications. It's neat because it exists as a fundamental tenet of our law that in order for any attorney to provide you with good counsel, you have to be able to speak freely with them. So that's why your communications are privileged. They are confidential. So the attorney sure as heck cannot disclose what you're saying to them. By having an attorney in our employment law example that you can go to and have full candor, you can say, look, here's my career path. I've got it planned out. I am leaving this company as a VP. I'm going to go over here and be an SVP, but my plan is to stay with them no more than 2 years. And then I've got the next 3 level companies on a higher tier that I'm going to leave to go to. So I already know that I'm going to leave. And, I cannot be handcuffed by this non-compete. So I'm not going to certainly tell them that I'm going to leave in 2 years, but I need you to help me go to the mat on negotiating this. And if it's not going to be negotiable, we need to figure that out now or in a hurry. And what might be some alternate paths so that I can keep my career trajectory in front of me.
Very powerful. That's amazing, Rob. I appreciate that. I have one last question for you to kind of wrap things up. What's something that an aspiring executive leader may not know but should know about working with either general counsel, corporate attorney, or individual attorneys as needed. What's one last like real important nugget that they need to know? Like, so you've covered that here's how you find good attorneys, here's how you engage with them. But what's something that maybe not everybody really understands that executive leaders might need to know?
I think the value for an executive leader would be hopefully they find someone they can build a long-term relationship with, because that relationship, then that attorney or their law firm is going to be there to know this executive when they were in their mid 30s, and then when they're in their early 40s at this level, and then their mid 40s, et cetera. So they can grow with you, and with that relationship then comes the understanding your tolerances for risk or non-risk. That is something that's important. It's not necessarily what you should know, but I think it's things that you should be thinking about when you are hiring someone. Like, I wouldn't just go for the first person I find when I am interviewing folks for legal counsel. If I were the consumer, and when I've hired attorneys to represent myself in the past, it's been always with an eye towards a long-term relationship. And again, that duty of candor and the confidentiality, what you shared in your mid 30s, it's still going to be confidential when you're in your mid 50s and older, if you're still working with the same person or their same law firm. Them having that perspective that they can grow with you, that's important. Lastly, I would say that if I'm inside an employee of a larger organization and I'm having issues or questions about my employment, I am personally distrustful of in-house HR departments and their in-house counsel when it comes to matters like that. So I would spend some time and effort. If you've made a couple of complaints, or let's say it like that, to your HR department and are not seeing anything, I would begin and strongly encourage you to talk with an employment law attorney in your state or your city where you're located that can help advise you on, is this really an issue? Or, hey man, Rob, you're being really sensitive. This isn't going to fly as a potential complaint against your company in any jurisdiction in our state or the country. You, Mr. Turner, need to settle down. Or, holy cow, this is what you need to be doing now to protect your interests. And they can give you a roadmap if you think things are going to go south in a hurry. So I would just say less is more when you're talking to in-house counsel, unless it's purely about a business matter, like, hey, this customer really wants to mark up the indemnity provisions in our MSA, or they want us increase our liability limit. Of course, give them full candor there. But if it's anything relating to you, the individual, the growing executive, I would be very guarded in what I disclose to them.
Very powerful. I agree with that. Having an attorney that you know, like, and trust. I've had the same attorney since 2017. He
Great.
helped me start up, build, venture fund, and wind down a startup company, and has helped me with this company and other issues and situations in between of all types. He's referred me to excellent attorneys, and I know that you are doing the same for several of our clients and some of the coaches here as well, which is how we connected.
Yeah.
And this is a really powerful episode because I think not everybody really understands how important the executive attorney relationship needs to be. So you need to have that relationship before you need the relationship. I think that's the catch-22 that a lot of people find themselves in. So usually the first time they're seeking out counsel is when they are in an emerging situation and they've got 30 days to respond to something they don't know how to read. Rob, well, again, I think we're at time here, but I want to say thank you for sharing this with the audience. What's the best way for people to reach out to you?
I would say my LinkedIn profile. I'm in the process of updating my website. The text is current, but that's an early new year project for in-town legal. LinkedIn is certainly a good way to do so, Tom.
So we'll definitely put your LinkedIn profile down in the show notes here so you can grab that if you want to reach out to Rob. If you don't know a good attorney, now you do. Start there. I think that's a great way to start to get legal aware of how legal matters work and how working with attorneys works and so forth. So Rob, once again, thank you for your time today. It's really been great, and looking forward to talk to you in another one.
Yeah, thank you so much. I really enjoyed it. I appreciate your time too, Tom. Thank you.
All right. See you guys soon.